heart of where innovation, money, and power collide in Silicon Valley and beyond. This is Bloomberg Technology with Caroline Hyde and Ed Ludlow.
From Los Angeles and San Francisco. This is Bloomberg Technology. Coming up, cracking down on big tech. The DOJ considering a historic breakup of Google.
More than a dozen US states filing lawsuits against TikTok. We'll be joined by New Jersey's Attorney General.
And we're live from Citadel's Global Macro Conference in New York. A conversation with the CEO, Peng Zhao, is coming up. But first, let's go to our top story. Shares of Alphabet are lower today by 1.6%. That's after the DOJ is weighing a breakup of Google over its monopolistic dominance of online search. We go straight to the reporter who's been all over this, Bloomberg's Leah Lylan. Leah, you reported this back in August, that this might be a consideration, that the DOJ would put this to the judge. What's moved on from that reporting, Leah?
Yes, so now we are actually getting into the remedies phase. So last night the Justice Department put its first filing in. It actually just laid out a framework of various things that it's thinking about as it is crafting a remedy proposal. They're going to have an official proposal that lays out everything that they want Google to do on November 20th. But this was just sort of like, here's what we're thinking. These are some of the options. The big one, of course, was the breakup.
Okay, so let's get into that timeline. You mentioned November 20th. We'll bring it up on the screen. The first is the sort of firming of the proposals. Then Google gets a chance. Next April, we'll have a trial. And then by August, I think, of 2025, we might get some sort of decision. Explain all of that, please, Leah.
Yes, so DOJ is going to put its filing in that says this is exactly what we want, whether that's a breakup, data sharing, all those things. And then Google gets a chance to respond. Over the next couple months, they're going to be doing a lot more discovery again. So they're going to do interviews with Google folks. They're going to get more documents, all leading up to this big 2-week remedy trial that will take place late April. In that, they're going to have witnesses testify before the judge about what would actually happen to Google's business if he takes any of these particular actions. And then he has promised that he will issue a decision in August of next year. That officially wraps up the case at the trial court, and then Google can start its appeal. The appeal, takes like 18 months to 2 years. So we're looking at like August for the sort of like first big deadline, and then we'll go into the appeals, and then, maybe some of this would be taking place like as 18 months to 2 years from then.
Let's just go to Google's own response, because the US judge is saying that Google's distribution agreements foreclose a substantial portion of the general search services market and impair rivals' opportunities to compete. That's the judge's take. Google's take is that this is pretty radical, right, Leah?
Yes. I mean, Google said what he found was illegal is these specific contracts. So DOJ should be focusing on the contracts and just looking at those. They say, that these things that the Justice Department is proposing go way beyond those contracts. They're talking about, breaking up our company. They're talking about making us sell off Chrome, which wasn't even really part of the case that much because Google owns Chrome. And so it is pushing back pretty hard on a lot of these remedies, the breakup in particular. The other thing that they have said is, the Justice Department says that AI is a very big issue here because a lot of the data that Google uses to build its search results is the same data that is used to build its AI products. And the Justice Department says that Google shouldn't sort of get to benefit from the illegal conduct in the search market, in the AI market. And so it wants to put some limits on that. And Google says, wait a second, we were talking about search. That's not AI. You shouldn't get to make some limits on us in this completely other different field. So that will be a big issue for the judge to decide next year.
Bloomberg's Leah Nyland, a late night for you in DC and an early morning too. Important reporting, but the stock's on the move. Meanwhile, Google CEO Sundar Pichai sat down with David Rubenstein for his show, Peer-to-Peer Conversations. Here's a reminder about what he had to say about the mounting legal woes and antitrust suits from the DOJ.
We definitely disagree with the ruling, but we're still in the middle of the the remedies phase, and we will appeal, and this process will likely take many years. And I'm confident, given that we are focused on innovating using technology, we'll do well in the long run.
You can see that full interview tonight on the David Rubenstein Show, Peer-to-Peer Conversations, 9 p.m. New York time. Caroline.
Let's just dig into antitrust, the risk to big tech right now. Jason Betts, Ameriprise Financial Private Wealth Advisor, is with us. And look, the stock is down for Alphabet, but by 1.6%, the biggest move since October the 7th. It doesn't feel like many people are pricing in a breakup to this extent right now. Is it a risk, antitrust issues?
Antitrust issues in general make for a very, very an eye-catching headline. Certainly, it's what all of us are talking about right now. We see this play out every several years in the technology space and in pharmaceuticals and in energy with the antitrust issues. My feeling is it's such a long timeline, and there's so many what ifs that we can speculate on. But as actual investors looking at fundamentals and trying to navigate this, I really don't think there's anything that we should be thinking about doing differently as we approach our investment portfolios.
Well, hold on, Jason. Hold on.
Sorry.
The stock's down 1.6% in a market that's up. And we showed that timeline. So you get to August of next year, and a hypothetical, the judge orders the breakup. Now, they'll counter it in court. But let's say it happens. How do you prepare for that?
I mean, you prepare for it like you prepare for anything else, in my opinion, which is making sure that everything within the investment portfolio looks okay under the hood. And whether, regardless of any individual security, you want to make sure that you don't have too much exposure in any one individual security, where if the worst case scenario does play out, that it could have somewhat irreparable consequences on your financial future or your wealth. Other than that, with our firm, we take a really holistic approach and we take a disciplined approach. So while this is it's a very eye-catching headline today, it's something that we're going to be talking about certainly for the next couple of days, if not for the next few weeks. It's going to be a long process, and the idea of trying to do anything differently with positioning right now, other than making sure that your positions are not overweighted or underweighted for that matter, I just don't really see anything else that requires material attention right now today.
Well, it's interesting you use the phrase single security, but basically most of the mega cap tech names have some form of antitrust scrutiny on them in multiple jurisdictions. And so in aggregate, how much of an anxiety is it then if you think about it through that lens?
Yeah, I mean, if you're properly diversified, it's not that much of anxiety, because if the worst case scenario is what you see is some sort of shift in leadership within, the more specialized technology sectors. So again, it's just at these stages right now, like I said, we see this time and time again over my last 27 years in this industry. Certainly with technology and AI, the stakes are higher, but we've seen it in pharma and energy and technology in the past. Generally speaking, we don't see a whole lot of movement materially within the markets, or sometimes even within the sectors, as a result of these antitrust headlines. But time will tell.
Time will tell. The anxiety here and now for the market in many ways is what revenue, what profitability looks like right here, right now for AI. I know you've been writing a lot on this, Jason. And we actually get another good sign. TSMC's numbers come in, and they come in strong. We'll be digging into that in a moment. But what are you getting in terms of a gut check on the valuations of these mega caps?
Yeah, absolutely. My gut check is that valuations are stretched. Now, having said that, it's the markets, and the markets do things that we don't expect all the time. But if I look at the valuations and I look at what, in my opinion, is kind of a more or less a best case scenario that's playing out in terms of the expectations on future earnings, it's tough to see these levels go materially higher without continued breakout positive data. That said, we've had that, to your point, and we may see that moving forward. But I would just take it back again to making sure, regardless of what happens moving forward, look under the hood of the portfolio and make sure that you're not too overweighted in any individual names or in any one particular sector.
What about, therefore, the macro picture? if you're thinking about any one sector, look, it's been impossible not to be overweight and to be extraordinarily heavily weighted towards technology because of the sheer valuations of these companies. How do you continue to rebalance, particularly when you're thinking about what interest rates are up to?
Yeah, well, I mean, regardless of interest rates, when we're rebalancing, obviously we need to, we want to do that. I think investors have actually gotten away from that a lot over the last year or two, and that's part of the reason why we've probably seen this excessive leadership in these mega cap technology stocks. But in terms of other sectors that I may like in the markets right now, I've said this for about the last 6 to 12 months that I really like utilities, not because I thought utilities would be outperforming the S&P over the last year to date, but just simply because they were so undervalued and the valuations were delicious. And I think they're still attractive, and there's still room for growth there. I like healthcare because of it's because it has actually underperformed, and I think it might be due for some mean reversion. And to your point with interest rates, if and when they continue to come down, then that sets the table again for a conversation about a more active mergers and acquisitions market. That's good for healthcare. It's especially good for biotech.
You mentioned utilities. Are you one of many that are now interested in this groundbreaking new field called nuclear energy that could be powering all of the AI infrastructure investment that we'll see?
At this moment, I would say no, not in any above average fashion. We're obviously looking at it and considering all the information and the news and the data points, but there's not any particular over excitement, for lack of a better way to put it, at this time concerning that.
All right, our thanks to Jason Betts of Ameriprise. Good to catch up and have you here on Bloomberg Technology. Now, coming up on the show, 2 DeepMind scientists are now Nobel Prize winners for their research using artificial intelligence. A fascinating conversation to come. This is Bloomberg Technology. Two Google DeepMind scientists are now Nobel Prize winners. They're sharing the 2024 Nobel Prize in Chemistry with US professors for their breakthrough research into proteins, which were developed through AI. Bloomberg's Mark Bergen reported on it and joins us from London. I've never seen you, Mark, so excited about the intersection of science and technology. What have you been writing about?
Oh, tremendously excited. This is actually come earlier than we expected, but we knew it was something that the co-founder and CEO of DeepMind, Demis Hassabis, who is one of the award winners this morning, we've reported this is something he's told colleagues. This has been an ambition of his. Our colleague from the Bloomberg Opinion side, Parmi Olsen, her great book that just came out, I think she said he told people he wanted the company to win at least 3 to 5 over the course of the next few years. So perhaps this is the first of many.
Let's just go into John Jumper of DeepMind and Demis Hassabis. What is it? It's the AlphaFold work that they did. Was that really what's pushed them to this first of what maybe Demis hopes will be many Nobel Prizes?
I think so. I mean, this is my understanding of Demis's priority has been using AI for science. It's certainly been overshadowed by ChatGPT and generative AI. And there's when we've done some reporting about how some of this work has been overshadowed inside of Google and DeepMind, right, where they have, I think for commercial reasons, shifted a lot of their research priorities towards Gemini and towards generative AI. But they obviously still have a team working on AlphaFold. They're trying to commercialize that rather with this new Alphabet company, Isomorphic Labs, that Demis in his spare time also runs. And that's so they did a press conference, Demis and John Jumper this afternoon about this prize. And, one of the things they talked about was the continued work around drug discovery.
Elsewhere in Nobel Prize winners, Geoffrey Hinton won the prize for physics, his work on neural nets. And in a presser, he threw a bit of shade. Listen to this.
I was particularly fortunate to have many very clever students, much cleverer than me, who actually made things work. They've gone on to do great things. I'm particularly proud of the fact that one of my students fired Sam Altman.
Particularly proud that one of his students fired Sam Altman. You got a free pass. Just your comment on that, Mark.
I mean, I guess the comment would be it's a great luxury to be one of the most senior respected scientists in your field. Pretty much carte blanche to say anything. But even then, I think, he was at Google. He has a fascinating history, right? He left Google and talked about, kind of gave a really adamant warning about some of the dangers and risks of AI. My sense is that, and I haven't actually spoken to Jeff Hinton about this, but he sees Demis Hassabis as a scientist and and certainly some researchers in the field as being scientists and some being executives and CEOs, and maybe putting that to camp. And that's Google obviously wants to marry both those worlds, and we'll see. There's always going to be tension between those two, obviously.
AI really cleaning up on these Nobel Prizes, and of course Geoffrey Hinton was mentioning about Ilya Sutskever, of course, and his role within the Sam Altman ouster. Mark Bergen, we thank you so much. Also in the AI space, let's talk about it. Sam Altman's OpenAI being accused by Elon Musk of harassment in a legal fight that's unfolding as the startup weighs a plan to shift to a for-profit business model. Musk filed a complaint in August claiming that OpenAI's co-founders manipulated him into investing in the startup, which at the start was a non-profit. Bloomberg's Malti Nayak now joins us to explain the back and forth here, because there have been other legal wranglings between Elon Musk and OpenAI now saying, look, you're harassing us.
Yes, OpenAI and Musk are now at it again. This time, OpenAI is lashing back at Musk's lawsuit, which was filed in August, and saying, this is harassment. We've been accused of corruption and racketeering here. And what they're saying is that actually Musk is doing this to gain a competitive advantage with his XAI. So they're saying we're being harassed here. And they've asked a judge actually to throw out this lawsuit. This sort of saga continues, and we'll have to see what happens in terms of whether this suit survives in court or not.
So OpenAI is accusing Elon Musk of harassment. And Elon Musk is saying that this is a textbook tale of altruism versus greed. The bit that I'm struggling with is, what is Elon Musk trying to achieve? What is his end goal in the suits that he is filing against OpenAI?
Got it. So what he says is he feels like he's been deceived, and his lawsuit talked about deceit of Shakespearean proportions. So I think he appears to be hurt here and says, I've been deceived, you manipulated me into investing here. You started off with this founding mission of being this company that would benefit human good, and here you are now sort of shifting to this for-profit model. So it definitely seems like he appears hurt in sort of the words that are being used in the lawsuit. And what OpenAI says is, hey, you're just using legal warfare here to hurt us and benefit your own company. Because this new lawsuit, which was filed in August, OpenAI says is adding on some extra, more intense claims such as racketeering and corruption. So OpenAI says, you're just doing this for your own benefit and trying to hurt us and using the court system to basically get back at us.
Bloomberg's Malti Nayak, thank you very much. Time now for AI in action. Let's bring in Priya Sai Prasad, co-founder and general partner of the newly founded venture firm Turing Capital, for a take on how to identify the best industries for AI investment. And Priya, a lot of my work has been looking at a wide range of, let's say, tech sector subdivisions where AI is having an impact. It can be anything from software to hardware, industrial, EV, robotics, healthcare. And right now, everyone and anyone is slapping a sticker on themselves saying, we are somehow AI adjacent. But that can be an opportunity for you. You're setting yourselves up to invest. Where do you start?
Right, definitely. Actually, thank you for mentioning that. So, our thesis at Turing is to really partner with entrepreneurs who are building AI-enabled, AI-adjacent software that really solves real-world problems and enhances productivity across different industries. But, the answer is, how do you actually choose which industries that are so ripe for AI? And we typically look for industries that are general laggards in sort of that initial wave of digital transformation, and who, in a lot of cases, still rely on pen, paper, and and Excel. And we think those are the opportunities for the most advancement, at least the low-hanging fruit that AI can initially tackle.
Looking at some of the startups that you've already invested in, we've got your portfolio up for us now. Pixis, that's marketing. Delupa, that's financial services. Car dealership with Numa, I can understand why that's perhaps slow to pick up on AI, but why do you feel that these areas are ripe for disruption from artificial intelligence?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So we typically use a framework when we think of whether a particular vertical or an industry is ripe for AI transformation. The first thing that we look for is, a large total addressable market, an actual sort of friction or pain point that's really experienced in that market. And then we, again, prefer relatively old school industries who still rely on pen, paper, and Excel for the most part, but are now sort of forced to deal head on with the tailwinds from AI adoption in order to actually remain competitive in that industry. And lastly, we look for sort of immediate ROI that's delivered from the product to the end user in that market, creating sort of this strong propensity to pay. And I always say the best opportunities in AI often seem niche to the industry outsider, but are sort of life-changing to that end user. And,
right.
As you pointed out, as you pointed out, our investment in Numa is sort of a great example of all of this. It's an AI communication platform that's sort of purpose-built for service professionals at car dealerships to use.
Really, really quick, not just immediate ROI, but I kind of find that companies are shrinking. You can have a 5 or 10 person operation that's doing well. Would you invest there?
Yeah, a 5 or 10 person company, you mean? A startup?
Yeah, with serious money, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we typically at Turing invest in Series B companies. So companies in that early inflection growth point where you have about 3 to 10 million of revenues, right? So, in a lot of cases, it can be companies as small as, call it 15 employees, 20 employees. So for sure, absolutely.
We're going to have to wrap it up, I'm afraid. Priya Sai Prasad, thank you so much for your time, co-founder and general partner at Turing Capital. Welcome back to Bloomberg Technology. I'm Caroline Hyde in Los Angeles.
And I'm Ed Ludlow in San Francisco. A quick check-in on the markets. We are, I'd say, modestly higher, and technology is kind of leading the way. CPI data is what we're all waiting for. Semiconductors doing well, the names you'd expect. And that makes Alphabet, the parent of Google's decline, all the more pronounced. We've gone big on that story in the show. The preliminary proposal of the DOJ to a judge that one option is to break up Google in the context of antitrust. We'll continue to track it. And as we said, it will be over a number of months that process plays out. Another name that I'm looking at is Tesla. Earlier today, I broke a story with my colleagues Dana Ho and Kara Colson that one of the things that Elon Musk will talk about at We Robot, the Robotaxi event, is the pathway for FSD to be used with semi-truck. And if you look at that kind of 10 a.m. Eastern time mark, the stock went from negative to positive territory. I think there's a lot of interest around that story about the future of semi-truck, but we're waiting. What are we going to get? We're going to get a purpose-built robotaxi of some description. That is the markets if you're just joining us. Elsewhere, let's turn our attention to New York, where the Citadel Securities Global Macro Conference is underway. Bloomberg Sonali Basak is with Citadel Securities CEO Peng Zhao. Listen in.
Through that are already ahead in many of these instances. So I think we will see, at least for this next period, an increased adoption of using AI as productivity tools internally. We're still some distance away, both from a technological perspective, but also importantly from a regulation and even legal perspective until we have further clarity and perhaps really a few of these cases that would test our core system and regulatory system in terms of what is going to be okay, what is going to be acceptable when it comes down to actually bringing in generative AI technology all the way through to the end user. We're still some distance away from that.
I want to get into what would kind of break down those limitations, what it would unlock, but before that, you mentioned OpenAI. Another thing about a year ago is many financial companies would say we are hesitant to work with a third party because of the liability, because of the risks. And more you've seen more financial services companies work with OpenAI, work with Anthropic, what have you. Are you working with OpenAI OpenAI and other players as well?
Yeah, we use we partner with most of the top providers. OpenAI, I think from our perspective, they've been valuable partners. And then the other part of this is it's crucially important for us to be informed on the cutting edge. Even if not every upgrade and every release every week is necessarily going to lead to real changes for us internally, we want to be on that release note. We want to be examining that. We want to stay up to date on what is becoming possible, and that's moving every week.
What is becoming possible? What does working with OpenAI do for you that you wouldn't have been able to do before?
I think some of there's a lot of different examples. I think some of the key workflows that was viewed as uniquely possible if you had a lot of certain type of talent are now being transferred from a heavily high-value human labor-intensive part of the workflow to being heavily automated. Even things like debugging, right? Things like, code reviews. Those were things that consumed a very large amount of high-value developer resources. Today, that's being somewhat replaced. Even in core areas of our model building, I'm not going to get into a level of details, there are certain part of the workflow that consumed a lot of our most valuable researcher time are also becoming much more automated. So again, I come back from the perspective of less revolutionary change from the product offering perspective, but more of a change from a productivity perspective. If I can take this group of 30 of the brightest, smartest, most innovative researchers in capital market and get a 20% productivity gain out of these 30, that's like hiring 6 international math Olympiad gold medalists. Just like that. And I'll do that every day.
Incredible. So what does this mean in terms of your performance as a company? It's been rumored forever that Citadel Securities would seek an IPO at some juncture. And so is this helping you kind of grow your margins much faster into a moment like that?
So there's 2 things. Well, first of all, we'll make sure Bloomberg is well informed if we ever seriously consider IPO.
Are you seriously considering an IPO?
No. And you all will read it on Bloomberg first, I'm sure. But putting that aside, I like how you slipped that in there. But putting that aside, I think it goes in both ways. I think for companies, there's certainly, I would say there's a risk for firms to not stay with the speed of innovation. And it's not necessarily generative AI. As I said, companies are spending time and resources in figuring out how they can leverage more automation and technology in increasing their productivity to stay on that frontier. Right? And the firms that cannot keep up in doing that, not only will they not win, they will lose. Okay? And I think the top firms in every field, including our field, are spending a really high quality time being very intentional in thinking about where they're going to allocate their resources to keep up with that innovation. At the same time, I also believe firms like ourselves on the other end of this will win based on our understanding of the market, based on our understanding, yet again, on what are the most important and most valuable problems our clients want to solve and that market want to solve. We are building better tools, but those better tools will not be nearly valuable enough unless we use them to solve the most valuable problems. And we do need those humans, going back to that, to be in
All things AI with Bloomberg's Shanali Basak and Peng Zhao of Citadel Securities. Ed.
Studying the market.
All right, let's get some more news in today's Talking Tech. And first up, social media platform X has been ordered to release old data from 2022 on fake users that Elon Musk tried to use to back out of the deal to buy Twitter. A Delaware judge has ordered X to file unredacted versions of several documents as well as some Slack messages. Plus, shares of chipmaker TSMC higher today after the company posted a better than expected 39% rise in quarterly revenue. The main chip maker to Nvidia and Apple reported September quarter sales of $23.6 billion, cooling analyst concerns that AI spending is tapering off. And Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang says the future of AI will be in services that can, quote, reason. Speaking on a podcast hosted by Arm Holdings CEO Rene Haas, Huang says next-gen tools will be able to respond to queries by searching and reflecting on their own conclusions, but prefaces that it all requires the cost of computing to come down first. Caroline.
Coming up, a search for more energy, maybe in space. We speak with the co-founder of Robinhood, Raju Bhatt, about his new company, Etherflux. That's next. This is Bloomberg Technology. TikTok has been sued by over a dozen states for allegedly deceiving users about its safety for children and for using addictive features to keep kids on the platform longer to maximize profits. One of those states is New Jersey. As Attorney General Matt Platkin joins us now for more. Attorney General, why pick this particular fight with TikTok? It's already being sued by the feds for child privacy issues. It might even be banned in the United States. Tell us the underlying reason for pursuing this.
Well, we know we're facing a youth mental health crisis in this country, and unfortunately, New Jersey is no exception. And as we have shown in a number of actions, we know that social media companies have knowingly targeted our youth in ways that have damaged their mental health and caused them real harm. And then to make matters worse, they've told the public that these products are safe when they themselves know they are not. So the lawsuits that New Jersey and several other states filed yesterday are meaningfully different than the lawsuit that you referenced that the Department of Justice has filed. It's for violation of our state consumer laws for, again, misleading the public about the safety of their products and deliberately treating our youngest residents as nothing more than commodities.
Let's talk about what's materially different from October the 24th last year, when New Jersey and other states also sued Meta, the parent company of Instagram or Facebook, again to protect children, mental health and the like. How are the two actions different? What do you see in particular with TikTok?
Well, legally, they're distinct lawsuits, and these investigations have been underway for some time, and investigations of these kinds take time. But as a general matter, we know that social media companies like Meta and TikTok have targeted our youth, have deliberately taken steps to keep our youth on their platforms for long periods of time, have implemented features like TikTok has with respect to body image features that allow you to put yourself on TikTok as if you had plastic surgery or extensive makeup that cause real harm to kids' mental health. That's created body dysmorphia crises and mental health crises, particularly amongst young girls. And so in that sense, the lawsuits are similar in that you see similar patterns across them, but they are distinct lawsuits. And Meta, because the Department of Justice had not filed a federal claim about children's privacy in Meta, we filed a claim there under that law, whereas the Department of Justice, as you noted, had stepped in on TikTok, so we did not need to file a federal claim. But otherwise, there are some similarities across the two complaints.
Well, Attorney General Platkin, forgive me, but for many of your constituents, that's a fair question. What's the point? There is a federal suit against TikTok. There's a legislative effort to get it banned in this country, and you've chosen a long path with this specific initiative. Why do it if there are all those others already in place, some of which have analogous goals with what you're trying to achieve?
Well, the federal lawsuit, plain and simple, covers different conduct. Here we're talking about deliberately misleading the public about the safety of their products, about telling people that their product is safe when they know it's not, when the United States Surgeon General has said publicly it's not, that they should have a warning label on it. And kids are using TikTok in particular for hours and hours a day, when we know just a few hours of TikTok a day can cause significant mental health harms to our kids. Now, I'm the state's attorney general. I'm the chief law enforcement officer for 9.3 million people. My job is to keep them safe. And when I see a company peddling a product, targeting our youngest residents, treating them for nothing more than dollar signs, and putting profit ahead of their mental health, then I have an obligation to step in and protect them. And that's what this lawsuit and the lawsuit against Meta is doing.
Mr. Platkin, if this proceeds and goes before a jury, how will you show that what TikTok does is intentional, that it is malicious, in your accusation that they are profiting off young users?
Well, I'm not going to speak to what we'd eventually show at a trial, but I think our complaint lays out very clearly what TikTok knew and the harms that their products have caused, including the result is that we have essentially compulsive users of TikTok products ages 13 to 17 throughout our state and throughout this country. And we know at the same time we're experiencing a massive spike in mental health challenges for our youths, suicidal ideation, depression, anxiety, all up at historic levels. So we're very confident in the case that we've brought against TikTok. We obviously wouldn't bring a lawsuit like this if we didn't feel very confident in our case and if we weren't prepared to take on what is, as with Meta, one of the largest companies in the world. And my message is simple. We're ready for that fight.
New Jersey Attorney General Matt Platkin, thank you very much for your time. The answer to the world's energy problems may be in space. A for Flux is a new company with the aims of harnessing solar energy using lasers and low Earth orbit satellites in order to deliver renewable power globally. CEO Baiju Bhatt joins us in San Francisco for more. It's out of science fiction, but you can kind of see it. So explain the basics of the technology, how this would work.
Yeah, so thanks for having me on. Like I said, the name of the company is Aetherflux, and the mission is to take this idea of space solar power, which is an old NASA Department of Energy idea, and make it a real-life thing. And the basic concept is you collect solar power in orbit, and by doing so, you're able to beam it down to locations virtually globally, and by doing so, address a lot of the limitations of renewable energy and the intermittency.
To address what the audience might be wondering, I know you as one of the co-founders of Robinhood. Your background, though, is in physics. You have a family tied to NASA. Yeah. How did this company come about?
Yeah, so my love of physics and space industry actually goes back really long. So I grew up with my dad studying physics in the United States. He worked at NASA when I was a kid, and I studied physics and math at Stanford. And so I've kind of had a love of the space industry from childhood. And through building Robinhood, the passion for looking for commercial opportunities in space, how can we make space technology useful for people on Earth, has kind of been a love of mine for a long time. And in particular, asking the question about how can we bring natural resources from space down to Earth, and I think energy is one of the natural choices for that.
Bringing it down from space to Earth. You said beam it down. Like, get into the nitty-gritty. How does one beam it down?
Yeah, so the way that we're going to be transferring power from space to Earth is actually using a constellation of satellites in low Earth orbit, and each one collects power and then uses infrared lasers to find a ground station and actually transmit power down to it. So in the same way that you collect solar power with solar power with traditional panels, with this you'll have a bespoke ground station that forms a connection with a satellite and receives power from space. So where companies like SpaceX have launched a constellation of communication satellites. This would be a constellation of energy satellites.
You're financially backing this, Baiju, obviously with the help of a very successful startup you were co-CEO of previously. What is the funding that will be necessary? Who will you bring on board? How much will this cost?
So right now the company is funded by me, but as we grow the company, you know, we're talking about building a large number of satellites, so it'll take more capital to do that. In terms of the scaling of the business, one of the opportunities that we're looking at in the near term is going to be how can we solve problems that are real on planet Earth today? And the stuff that we're focusing on is how can we deliver power to places that are either contested or difficult to reach? So think military applications like forward deployed bases or things like remote mining applications.
Gotta ask, sounds amazing, but are we talking theoretical physics or are we talking applied physics?
Yeah, so this was one of the core ideas behind this approach, which is we view this as primarily an engineering and economics problem, not a hard science problem. So this is not the sort of company where we're looking to make a breakthrough in science, but rather how can we take technologies that exist today where even other industries are maturing them and use those technologies to create something that can happen today.
You will need a launch provider to put you to orbit. What is your relationship with SpaceX, Rocket Lab, the other providers out there?
Yeah, so we're talking to launch providers right now. We're still in the early stages. We're talking to SpaceX, as you mentioned, and we're targeting a launch of our first mission, which will aim to demonstrate this capability Q4 of next year or Q1 the year after.
Baiju Bhatt, Hyperflux. Sorry, Kara, go ahead.
No, great to have some time with him. I'm just envisaging lasers beaming down from space, infrared. We appreciate it. Thank you for explaining it all.
Thank you so much.
From this edition of Bloomberg Technology, Ed.
Tomorrow, Bloomberg Technology is live from Los Angeles for Bloomberg Screen Time. You do not want to miss that. Just stunning lineup of guests. Pretty stunning lineup of guests today's show as well. Recap it on the podcast. You know exactly where to find it online. Apple, Spotify, iHeart, and all of the Bloomberg platforms. The team is out in LA right now. I've got to catch a flight and join them. A few big days of shows to come. This is Bloomberg Technology.